My own son kicked me out in the dead of night, in -30 degrees, barefoot, sweaterless, told me to freeze outside like I was nothing. He thought that was the end of me. But I didn't just survive. I planned something he never saw coming. And oh, I made him regret it. Before continue, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That's free and only way to support us. Thank you. My name is Richard. 64 years old. I wasn't born with money, but I made it. I've poured sweat, blood, and 2 broken backs into building everything I owned. A roofing business I started from scratch. A cozy house on the edge of Minnesota, where winters bite harder than any enemy I ever had. A life I thought would be warm in my old age. And my son, Brandon, he had it all. Good education. Private school. Vacations. Every chance I never got. I used to skip meals so he could eat better. I'd work 2 shifts just to buy him new sneakers while I walked in worn-out boots. I gave him everything, except maybe the humility he desperately needed. Now don't get me wrong, I didn't expect him to worship me. I just wanted a little respect. A handshake at dinner. A check-in phone call. A simple thanks, Dad. But what I got instead was a lesson in betrayal I'll never forget. It all started that night, the night winter really showed its teeth. Minnesota was colder than a banker's smile that week. It had dropped to -30 degrees outside. The kind of cold where your eyelashes freeze if you blink too slow. I was sitting by the fireplace, wrapped in a blanket, minding my own business, sipping some reheated coffee. Brandon walked in, wearing a designer coat and holding his phone like it was some holy relic. He didn't say hello. Just stared at me. That blank look, the one that always came before something stupid. He said he needed the house, not just needed, but wanted to rent it out. Said it was wasted space, and that I could live in a facility, his words, like other old people do. I thought he was joking. I chuckled. That was my mistake. Because apparently, Brandon wasn't playing. His tone got sharper. His jaw tight. Said I was just taking up real estate. Can you believe that? Real estate. Not even a father. Just a number on a square foot measurement. Still, I stayed calm. I said, "This is my house. The deed's in my name." He said, "Not for long." It was like someone poured ice water down my spine. My own son. The boy I used to rock to sleep. The kid I shielded from every storm in life, now trying to throw me into one. I stood up and told him he was being ridiculous. That he needed to check himself. And you know what he did? He walked over, opened the front door, and told me to get out. Right there. No shoes. No coat. Just the flannel pajamas I wore to bed. At first, I froze. Not because of the cold, not yet, but because I was still trying to understand whether this was real. My own son, kicking me out like I was a trespasser. I laughed. I did. A little nervous laugh. Thought maybe this was some elaborate joke, or maybe he was high on something. But he shoved me. Not hard, but just enough. And suddenly, I was outside. The door slammed behind me. I could hear the deadbolt click. I stood there, in -30 degrees. Pajamas. No sweater. Bare feet on snow like powdered knives. I was shaking, but not just from the cold. My fingers curled into fists. My jaw clenched. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from the sheer fire building inside me. He said I should freeze. Fine. But I wouldn't die out there. I wouldn't crawl. I'd rise. And I'd make damn sure he learned what winter really feels like, when karma starts snowing down. The first few steps into that frozen night felt like stepping into a grave. The snow swallowed my feet instantly, cold biting up through my bones like it had a personal vendetta. My breath came out in shaky clouds, my fingers already going numb. I didn't have a phone. No wallet. Not even socks. Every inch of my body screamed at me to collapse. But something louder kept me upright. Pride. Rage. A voice inside my head that whispered, "Don't give him the satisfaction." I looked back once. Just once. The window was dark. No curtain twitching. No apology coming. Brandon didn't just lock me out of the house, he locked me out of his heart. I was no longer his father. I was nothing but a problem to solve. A roadblock. A leftover. I turned and started walking. I didn't know where I was going. I wasn't thinking about destination. Just survival. Step after step, like an old soldier dragging himself from a battlefield. The snow fell heavier now. My teeth chattered like a drumbeat of despair. I started talking to myself. Muttering. Cursing. Laughing like a lunatic at one point when I passed a "Keep Warm, Stay Safe" billboard. The irony almost killed me. About 2 miles down the road, I saw a flickering red neon light, the kind you only see in late-night gas stations or horror movies. It looked like heaven to me. I stumbled in, barefoot and shaking like a wet dog. The guy behind the counter looked like he'd seen a ghost. He ran around, grabbed a blanket from the back, wrapped me in it, and asked me what happened. I didn't answer. Not fully. Just said, kicked out. That was enough. He gave me hot chocolate. Burned my tongue. Didn't care. Warmth felt like a miracle. Then he called 911. I didn't argue. The paramedics came fast. Hooked me up, wrapped me tighter, asked me questions. I gave them my name. Nothing else. Didn't want to talk about Brandon. Didn't want my son's name in the same air as mine that night. They took me to the ER. Frostbite. Minor hypothermia. Nurse said I was lucky. Said another hour, and I'd be a frozen headline on the local news. Elderly man found in pajamas on sidewalk. But luck had nothing to do with it. I survived because I had one thing Brandon didn't. Fire. Not the kind you see in a fireplace. The kind that builds in your belly when someone rips your dignity away. The kind of fire that makes you want to rise from ashes and scorch the earth behind you. After they patched me up, they asked if I had family to call. I almost laughed. Not the ha-ha kind. The kind that sounds hollow, dry, bitter. Family. Not anymore. But there was one person. George. My younger brother. We hadn't spoken in over 10 years. Stupid fight over a stupid loan I never paid back. But he was all I had left. And maybe I was all he had too. So I called him. When he picked up, I expected silence. Maybe a hang-up. Maybe curses. Instead, he just asked one thing. Where are you? 4 hours later, he showed up at the hospital. Coat too big, beard too messy, but his arms were warm when he hugged me. He didn't ask what happened. Just said, come home. And that's when I knew. I lost a son. But I hadn't lost everything. What Brandon took from me, I was going to reclaim, piece by piece. And when I was done, the cold he left me in, it would be nothing compared to the storm I'd bring to his doorstep. George's house wasn't fancy. No polished floors, no smart gadgets, no fake smiles. Just warmth. Real warmth. The kind that comes from someone who still remembers who you were before the world tried to change you. I sat by his old wood stove with a wool blanket wrapped around me and a cup of lukewarm tea in my hands, thinking. Thinking about the boy I raised. How did we get here? Brandon wasn't born cruel. He was my miracle baby. His mother, bless her heart, had 3 miscarriages before him. When he finally arrived, I swore to God I'd protect him with every breath I had. I used to watch him sleep, afraid even dreams might scare him. I taught him how to ride a bike, how to drive a car, how to shave his face. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to teach him how to be human. Or maybe someone else taught him something worse. I started digging into it. From George's spare laptop, I logged into my old accounts. Passwords I hadn't used in years still worked. I was always too stubborn to change them. I opened my financial dashboard. What I saw made my chest tighten more than the night air ever could. Transfers. Withdrawals. Legal documents signed in my name. Brandon had been planning this for months. No, years. He had been slowly shifting ownership of assets, rerouting control, linking my retirement accounts to some shady new holding company. A company with his name on it. And I didn't even see it. That's the thing about trust. It makes you blind. You don't double-check your own kid. You don't read fine print when your own blood's involved. You just believe. And that's how they rob you. Turns out, the house, the one I built with my own calloused hands, had technically been gifted to him through some legal gymnastics. A temporary trust transfer, they called it. Something that was supposed to revert back to me once I passed a health evaluation. He had forged paperwork declaring me mentally incompetent. Can you believe that? Me, the man who taught him math, suddenly too dumb to sign his own checks. The insult wasn't in the paperwork. It was in the intent. My son wanted me gone. Not just physically. Gone from records. From ownership. From memory. I slammed the laptop shut. George heard it from the kitchen. You okay? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, he wants everything. George didn't ask who. He knew. Brothers have a sixth sense like that. He just walked over, sat down beside me, and handed me a small glass of something strong. What are you gonna do? He asked. I stared into the fire for a while. Then I whispered, make him wish he never learned my signature. The next morning, I got to work. Step 1, I called an old friend, Tom Rivera. Private investigator. Used to be a cop. Now he deals in digital footprints and broken marriages. We hadn't talked in a while, but when I said it's about my son, he showed up that evening. Tom brought files. Lots of them. Emails. Text messages. Leaked conversations. It was all there. Brandon had been boasting to a friend about how easy it was to outplay the old man. Said he'd soon be a millionaire without lifting a finger. What he didn't know was that finger was about to get burned. I may have looked like a washed-up grandpa in George's flannel robe, but inside, I was sharpening knives made of paper. Bank records. Deeds. Clauses. Contracts. Because if Brandon wanted to play the game, I was about to change the rules. And he wouldn't even see it coming. After weeks of silence, Brandon must have thought he'd won. I didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't post anything online. As far as he was concerned, I was either dead, in hiding, or just too weak to fight back. Perfect. Let the boy get comfortable. Let him believe his king. There's nothing more dangerous than a man who thinks the battle is over before it even starts. I ghosted the world. No banks. No insurance. No doctor visits. Just quietly breathing in George's guest room, sharpening my revenge plan like a blade. It was oddly peaceful. The calm before the hurricane. While he flaunted his fake empire online, flashy cars, champagne toasts, crypto nonsense, I was studying. Not him, but everything around him. His new lawyer. Sloppy. His accountant. Even sloppier. The company he was trying to build off my name. Paper thin. It was built like a sandcastle waiting for one hard wave. That wave was going to be me. See, what Brandon didn't know is that a long time ago, before he even knew what a spreadsheet was, I had created backup trusts, holding accounts, emergency switches. I used to joke with his mom that if Brandon ever got too big for his britches, I'd pull the rug from under him just to teach him a lesson. Now it wasn't a joke anymore. The old cabin up north? Still mine. Hidden under a holding company with a name even I forget sometimes. The retirement accounts. 2 of them were still in my name, untouched. Brandon had been too busy looking at the big pie to notice the slices I'd kept aside. And the best part? The house, the very one he kicked me out of, was still on paper registered under a special clause that required my notarized signature to finalize the transfer. The lawyer he used either missed it or thought I wouldn't catch it. But I did. The moment I realized that signature never happened, I smiled. Brandon didn't own the house. He only thought he did. All I had to do now was wait for him to trip. And he did. Hard. It started with a small news article. A woman accused him of business fraud. Said he promised returns, took the money, and disappeared. She wasn't the only one. More came forward. The whisper turned into a storm. And I stayed quiet. No warning. No help. Just silence. That silence, it was power. Because every time his phone rang, he probably wondered if it was me. Every letter he got with legal jargon probably made his hands sweat. I made myself a ghost, not to haunt him, but to remind him that I was still out there. Waiting. Then came the fun part. I hired a young hotshot lawyer, Natalie. She was half his age and twice as smart. I gave her everything, documents, proof, history. Her eyes widened at every page. You want to go public? She asked. No, I said. I want to go surgical. She grinned. This is going to be fun. Natalie moved fast. She filed injunctions. Froze accounts. Served legal notices in silence, like a thief in the night. Brandon didn't even know his empire was collapsing until his cards started declining. And just like that, the foundation he built on greed began to crack. He still didn't know it was me. Not yet. But when the storm came knocking, oh, he'd know. He'd feel it in his bones. The same way I felt the cold that night. Revenge isn't just about anger. It's about precision. You don't just throw a punch, you plan the hit. You don't just slap a thief, you dismantle their whole operation piece by piece, while they're still smiling, thinking they've won. And I was smiling too. Because it was time to start the real game. The first move, bait. I created a fake investment opportunity, a shell company with a shiny pitch deck, inflated numbers, promising stupid high returns. I used a fake name, fake background, fake everything. Hired an actor from Craigslist to pose as the CEO during Zoom calls. Guess who showed up drooling with interest? Brandon. He thought he was being invited into the world of elite investors. Thought someone finally recognized his brilliance. He came to the first meeting in a blazer 3 sizes too tight, sipping wine, talking big. I watched from behind the scenes, muted, camera off, smiling like a lion in the tall grass. We dangled the carrot. He took a bite. We let him invest a portion of his savings into our project. Of course, we timed everything to perfection. Right when his real business was starting to slip, this fake one promised salvation. A sure thing. Limited slots. Urgent. Brandon begged to invest more. He even convinced a few of his remaining followers online to join in. That's when we pulled the rug. The project paused. Then it disappeared. Brandon lost his money. The other investors started demanding refunds. Angry emails. Legal threats. But here's the delicious part. When he tried to sue, he found out his company was already being investigated. Not by me, but by people far scarier. Real authorities. Turns out, some of his shady shortcuts had triggered red flags. Natalie made sure those flags flew nice and high. He was cornered. But I wasn't done. Remember the house? He thought he still lived there legally. Thought the paperwork had locked me out for good. Wrong. Natalie filed a quiet court motion, using the clause he ignored, the one requiring my signature for full ownership. It took 2 weeks to process, but once the court ruled in my favor, we scheduled the eviction. Brandon had no idea. He came home from a night out, probably trying to drink his problems away, to find a sheriff and 2 legal officials waiting on the porch. He tried to argue. Tried to bluff. He even cried. Didn't work. They handed him the notice and told him he had 20 minutes to collect his things. And guess who showed up in the driveway during those 20 minutes? Me. Wearing a coat. Holding a cup of coffee. Looking him in the eye, the same way he looked at me that night. His jaw dropped. Dad. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. Only colder. Only emptier. I didn't say a word. Just nodded toward the box they'd packed for him. His clothes. His laptop. His ego. Oh, and one more thing I added myself, that old sweater I was wearing the night he threw me out. Folded. Neat. Sitting on top like a cherry on a bitter Sunday. He touched it like it was made of fire. I turned, walked into the house, and shut the door. Didn't lock it. Didn't need to. He knew the door was closed forever. The silence after the door closed behind me was louder than any explosion. It was thick, solid, almost sacred. The kind of silence that only comes after justice has been served fresh, hot, and personal. I walked through the house slowly, letting my fingers brush over the walls, the banister, the door frames. My house. My memories. Mine again. Every step I took echoed louder than Brandon's cries outside. I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need to. I had already seen enough. Brandon stood out there for a long time. I could hear the shuffle of boxes, the slam of a trunk. At one point, I think he sat on the porch. Maybe trying to figure out what just happened. Maybe realizing, for the first time, that actions do come with consequences. And sometimes those consequences wear wool slippers and sip tea. Once he was gone, I exhaled. Not because it was over, but because the war was finally mine to win. No more playing defense. No more waiting. This wasn't about making him feel pain anymore. It was about reminding him where he came from. And showing him exactly what he threw away. The next morning, news broke out. His investors filed lawsuits. Public ones. With names and faces and figures. Everything he tried to keep hidden spilled out like a busted trash bag. Headlines called him a scammer. A liar. A fraud. He tried to post some damage control on social media, but the comments lit him up like dry leaves under a match. Didn't you steal from your own dad? Imagine kicking your father out and ending up homeless. Karma wears boots, Brandon. Hope you like frostbite. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. The internet was doing my work for me. George and I watched it unfold like a TV show. We'd sit on the porch, scrolling through headlines, sipping cheap beer, laughing like idiots. It wasn't about celebrating his failure. It was about reclaiming our story. Rewriting it the right way. But even as I laughed, I knew something deeper was happening. Brandon wasn't just losing money. He was losing identity. He had built his life on lies, that he was a genius, a mogul, a man smarter than the father who raised him. And now he was nothing. No house. No savings. No girlfriend. Emily had dumped him the same night he got evicted. Took half his stuff, too. He tried reaching out to people. No one answered. He was alone. And that, I admit, was the hardest part to swallow. Because as much as I wanted him to hurt, I never wanted him to break. But he was broken. I saw him one afternoon, from the upstairs window. He was standing across the street, just watching the house. Hands in his pockets, head down, like a kid who lost his dog. He didn't come to the door. Didn't shout or knock. Just stared for a few minutes. Then walked away. That's when I realized something. I had won. I'd taken everything he took from me, and more. But instead of feeling proud, I just felt hollow. Revenge tastes good at first, but it doesn't fill you. It doesn't heal the scar. It just proves you're capable of hurting someone who hurt you. And now, I was standing in a warm house, full of old memories, while my son stood out in the cold, not just physically, but spiritually. Frozen. Lost. The same way I once was. And that's when the real plan started forming in my head. Not to punish him. But to teach him. To give him a taste of something even colder than snow. Growth. Something strange happens when you finally take your power back, everything slows down. The house felt different now. Not just because Brandon was gone, but because I could finally breathe without waiting for the next blow. The walls weren't just walls anymore, they were witnesses to survival. Every creak in the floorboards felt like an old friend nodding at me in approval. George stayed for a while. Said he was keeping an eye on me, but we both knew he just didn't want to miss the show. We fixed things around the house, patched up the roof, even replaced the ugly grey paint Brandon had slapped on the living room walls. We brought the fireplace back to life. We made the place feel like it used to, before the silence became hostile and the air became heavy. Neighbors started stopping by again. People who used to avoid eye contact when Brandon was around were now dropping off pies, shaking my hand, asking if I needed anything. One lady even brought me soup and called me Mr. Comeback. I liked that. And you know what I realized? For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving, I was living. I started volunteering at the local shelter. Just twice a week at first, then more. Talking to folks who'd been through hell and back. Men like me. Men who had families until they didn't. Who gave everything and were left with nothing. Some had stories worse than mine. Others. Well, let's just say their sons make Brandon look like a choir boy. But in those conversations, I found something I didn't expect, peace. Strange, right? Finding peace in a room full of broken people? But there was honesty there. No pretending. No power games. Just raw, unfiltered humanity. We laughed more than we cried. Shared bad coffee and worse jokes. And slowly, piece by piece, I started rebuilding, not just my life, but my soul. Meanwhile, Brandon? He was nowhere. No updates. No posts. No calls. I didn't go looking. Not yet. I figured the universe had him in a chokehold. Let it finish the lesson. But at night, when things got quiet, I'd sometimes wonder. Was he okay? Was he learning anything? Was he still angry, still blaming me, still playing victim? Then I'd snap out of it. Because sympathy for the devil only works in songs. I focused on me. I even started a journal. Yeah, I know, old man with a leather notebook scribbling his feelings. Who would have thought? But writing things down helped. Helped me understand why I let things go so far. Why I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. Why I let love blind me to manipulation. Turns out, being a father doesn't mean being a doormat. It means guiding, yes, but also holding firm. And sometimes, love looks like letting them fall flat on their face. One night, as the snow began falling again, I sat on the porch with a blanket and a mug of cocoa. I looked up at the stars and thought, this is the first winter I've felt warm in years. And then, I heard footsteps. Slow, hesitant, crunching through the snow like a bad memory. I didn't turn my head. Just listened. The steps stopped. Silence. Then a voice. Soft. Raspy. Dad. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. I just sipped my cocoa and whispered inside my own head. The next chapter begins now. I didn't have to look up to know it was Brandon. Even in the quiet snow, you know your own child's footsteps, the drag in his heel, the slight hesitation, the way he shifts weight like he's unsure if he wants to run or fight. I let the silence stretch for a moment. Let the cold air say what I wasn't ready to. He cleared his throat. I still didn't look at him. Finally, he said, "Can I talk to you?" I patted the porch rail beside me. Not an invitation inside, just a spot to sit. He hesitated, then took it. His breath came out in nervous clouds. I glanced at him from the corner of my eye. His once perfect hair was matted. His designer jacket replaced by something second-hand. Eyes sunken, cheeks hollow. No swagger, no smirk. Just a young man carrying the weight of consequences. He started slow, like a rusty engine. Said things like, "I messed up, and I didn't realize, and I didn't know it'd go that far." He blamed stress. Blamed the people around him. Blamed pressure. Blamed ambition. I didn't say a word. Not because I wasn't listening. But because I'd already heard it all before. Only now, it wasn't coming from a man who thought he was invincible. It was coming from a boy who'd been humbled. He asked if I hated him. I almost laughed. Hate? No. Hate requires too much energy. What I felt wasn't hate. It was disappointment. And pity. And something else I couldn't quite name. He looked at me with watery eyes and asked the question I knew was coming. Can I come home? That's when I finally turned to face him. The porch light hit his face, and I saw it, the fear. The shame. The genuine uncertainty of someone who expected a door slammed in his face. The very same door he once slammed on me. Poetic, isn't it? I took a long sip of cocoa. Let the steam hit my face. Let the past settle in my chest like dust. Then I said the same words he said to me. You should freeze outside. His face crumpled like paper. Not in anger. Not in arrogance. Just crushed. But then, I pulled something from beside my chair, an old wool blanket. Same one George had wrapped around me that night I nearly died on the sidewalk. I tossed it at his lap. Coffee's inside if you want it, I added. But you're not stepping 1 foot in this house. You sleep on this porch tonight. He nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't plead. Just wrapped himself up and sat there like a shamed dog left outside the door. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was worried, but because it's hard to sleep when history is being rewritten on your front porch. In the morning, I found him still there, arms tucked in, breath fogging the air. I made 2 cups of coffee. Handed him one. No words exchanged. We just sipped in silence, listening to the snow melt off the roof. It was the first moment of peace we'd shared in years. He wasn't forgiven. Not yet. But he was beginning to understand. Not the pain he caused me, but the pain that comes from growing up, when you finally meet the man in the mirror and realize he's not your hero. He's your lesson. And I was going to teach him. Brandon didn't leave that morning. He didn't storm off or slam gates. He just stood there with the coffee cup in his hand, staring at the frost-covered grass like it held the answers to all his regrets. There was no apology that could undo what he'd done. And he knew it. That was progress. I told him he could stay in the guest house. It wasn't much, just a converted garage with a tiny heater and a cot that squeaked if you even thought about moving. But it was dry. And warm. And it was a start. But I laid down the law before he even took a step. If you want shelter, you earn it. He nodded, quick, desperate. I pointed down the road toward the shelter I'd been volunteering at. They need help. Men to clean floors, fold sheets, scrub bathrooms. He blinked. You want me to work at a shelter? No, I said. I want you to work for your soul. It hit him like a slap. I didn't say it to be dramatic. I said it because it was the truth. He'd spent so long chasing status, pretending to be something he wasn't, stepping on people, including me, just to feel important. Now, he needed humility more than he needed comfort. That afternoon, I drove him down myself. The director at the shelter gave me a nod when I walked in. I didn't tell him who Brandon was. I let him introduce himself. Just another face looking for a second chance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Brandon was now surrounded by the very men he used to mock with his fancy suits and slick Instagram posts. And they weren't impressed. Day 1, he mopped floors. Day 2, cleaned toilets. Day 3, he showed up early. That's when I started to believe. Not in redemption, but in possibility. He came home sore, tired, smelling like bleach and regret. I didn't coddle him. Didn't praise him. But I did leave a warm meal on the porch table every evening. Small gestures. Quiet signals. We didn't talk about the past. Not yet. But one night, he came to the main house and knocked on the door. Not barged in. Knocked. I opened it. He held a tattered journal in his hand. Said he'd been writing in it, like I had. Said it helped him see things differently. Said he finally understood how far he'd fallen. Then he handed it to me. I want you to read it. I didn't. Not that night. But when I did, a few days later, I cried. Not because it was poetic. It wasn't. But because for the first time in a long time. He told the truth. He wrote about the fear of failing me. About how he chased money because he thought that's what made a man. About how losing everything made him realize the only thing that ever mattered was the man who gave him everything. Me. And he ended it with a line I'll never forget. I didn't just freeze you out that night, Dad. I froze my own soul. And you let me thaw. That's when I knew. My son was still in there. Buried deep beneath the ego and ambition and pride. The boy who used to fall asleep on my chest during storms. The boy who cried when his goldfish died. The boy who once called me his hero. He wasn't gone. He was just waiting to be found. And maybe, just maybe, this story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about resurrection. Brandon stayed in that guest house for months. Not because I made him, but because he chose to. Every morning, he walked down to the shelter, rain or snow, and every evening, he came back quiet and tired but lighter than the day before. We didn't talk much in the beginning. Just small things. How was the weather? How's George's back doing? Did the pipe under the sink finally give out? But slowly, the words grew. And eventually, we laughed. I hadn't laughed with my son in years. Not real laughter, the kind that starts deep in your gut and rattles the dust off old anger. We laughed over stupid things. A raccoon that broke into the garbage bin. Brandon slipping on ice and nearly taking out a snowman at the shelter. The time I tried to use TikTok and ended up accidentally live streaming my nap. That was the moment I knew. We were healing. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't perfect. Some nights, I'd still wake up remembering that freezing pavement. Remembering the look in his eyes that night he kicked me out. There's no erasing that. Some wounds don't vanish. They just close up and leave a scar you carry like a reminder. But I wasn't bitter anymore. Not because I forgave too easily, but because I realized bitterness was just another kind of frost. And I'd spent enough nights in the cold. The spring came slowly that year, like a shy apology. The snow melted. The porch swing creaked again. Birds returned. And Brandon asked if he could move back into the house. I said no. He blinked, confused. Then nodded, like he understood. But I wasn't finished. I handed him a key. To the cabin up north. The one he never cared about. The one his mother and I built with our bare hands, long before money clouded our judgment. It's yours now, I said. He didn't speak for a full minute. Just stared at the key like it weighed more than it should. I don't deserve this, he finally said. You didn't, I replied. But you worked for it. We hugged. It was awkward. Tight. Emotional. His shoulders shook a bit. I didn't mention it. He didn't either. That summer, he left for the cabin. Started fixing it up. Chopped wood. Grew a garden. Raised chickens, for God's sake. Even started bringing some of the shelter guys out on weekends to give them fresh air and a second chance. The Brandon who kicked me out? He's gone. Replaced by someone else. Someone new. Someone better. As for me, I'm still here. Same house. Same porch. Still sipping cocoa when the air gets cold. Still writing in my old leather journal. And every now and then, I look at that sweater, the one I wore that night, folded neatly in the closet. I keep it as a reminder. Not of pain. But of power. The power to survive. The power to rebuild. The power to forgive without forgetting. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But let me tell you something. If your revenge doesn't warm your bones in the end, it wasn't worth it. My revenge wasn't about watching him fall. It was about making him rise. And now, I laugh last. And my laugh is warm. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That's free and only way to support us. Thank you.